In this course, we have been trying to understand what is the ethical implication of information technology. We started by looking at traditional ethical theories and started debating whether the same theories can be applied to the issues emerging out of use of computers. More specifically, we were trying to answer the question whether there should be a separate area called computer ethics to deal with issues emerging out of computers. We concluded that the traditional issues, the traditional ethical theories can be applied in computers also, but there are few issues which are very specific to computers and they cannot be discussed with the traditional theories. There are three main issues in computer ethics. One, privacy. Second, accountability. Third, property rights. These three issues are the pillars of this topic called computer ethics. We have discussed all these three issues in great detail. How are privacy issues changing with the introduction of computers? How to set the accountability and the legal liability in case something goes wrong with respect to computers. And third, how do we deal with property related issue in computers? More specifically, how do we interpret the laws regarding copyrights, patents, trademarks and trade secrets when it comes to software? So privacy, accountability and property rights. These three issues we discussed in great detail. We also discussed how law takes a stand regarding these issues. Specifically from Indian context, we discussed the IT Act 2000 and its amendments. Because at the end of the day, the issues emerging out of these things should be handled legally. And as the first commandment in computer ethics goes, or for that matter in general ethics goes, if something is illegal, it is immoral also. So legality of an issue is very important for us. First we should see whether the issue is legal or illegal. If the issue is illegal, the matter will be closed then and there. Only if it is not illegal, we turn our attention to whether it is immoral or moral, ethical or unethical. That debate will continue only if the matter is legal. If a matter is illegal, we are not interested in debating whether it is ethical or unethical. Of course, there may be exceptions for us. Sometimes we may feel that the law itself is wrong. So, some issue may be classified as illegal wrongly. That may be the extreme case. But in general situations, if something is illegal, it is immoral and unethical also. Is the first commandment here. So all the traditional issues of computer ethics were discussed, and then we shifted our attention to some of the emerging issues, some of the upcoming issues with relate to computers, which we think may cause some ethical tensions. We discussed artificial intelligence. We also discussed virtual reality. In today's class, I want to discuss the issue of cyberspace. That is the representative alternate reality that has been created over internet. How has cyberspace altered the issues regarding the computer usage and what are the ethical issues emerging out of it? Will be the topic of my discussion today. In the beginning, let me first distinguish between internet as an infrastructure and cyberspace as a virtual reality space created over internet. I am not considering both as equals. Internet is separate and cyberspace is separate. Internet is a real network. Internet with a capital I, as we know it, is a network of networks. Internet exists physically. You can see the wires, you can see the machines which it connects to. So it is real. Whereas cyberspace is virtual. So virtual space. Cyberspace exists because there is internet. Cyberspace exists over internet. But both are not equal. Many people do confuse these terms. They also introduce one more word called WWW. I make a distinction between these terms. Internet for me is this infrastructure. WWW is a small part of cyberspace. Cyberspace consists of much more than WWW. It's actually an alternate world created over internet. So, it is very important for us to distinguish that the physical internet is different from virtual cyberspace. First, we look at internet itself. Of all the infrastructure, technologies created by man, internet is very special. Special because it has certain unique principle in its design. Internet by design is open. By open I mean there is no one central authority which governs it. By open I mean anybody can join the network and anybody can go out of the network. By open I mean internet does not distinguish between one machine to other machine, one device to other device. This is very unique to internet. No other system created by man has this openness principle embedded into the technology. Let us take for example the equivalent networks. Roadways. It's a network, right? Compare internet as a network with roadways as a network. You will instantly recognize the difference. In roads, it is centrally governed. Either the national government will create national highways, state government will create state highways, then there is Gram Panchayat which will create the local roads. All are interconnected, but there is a difference. The roads created by Gram Panchayat will not have the same quality that of the national highways. Though they are interconnected, the quality is not same. Come to internet. Whether company A provides you the internet, company B provides you the internet, company C provides you the internet, it's all same. There is no hierarchy. In roads there is hierarchy. Right? Of course in roads, theoretically it is open for everyone. Anybody can take out their vehicle and use the road. Anybody can walk on the road. Theoretically it's open. But you can always block the access to someone. It's very easy. Or you can say, I will put a toll here. Anybody who pays the toll only can use this road. That's also possible. With the internet, such things are possible but are not done. So there is a difference. Or compare internet with telephone network. Telephone network by definition is open. Like internet, it's also open. Unlike in road network, there is no differentiation. But between internet as a network and telephony as a network, there is a big difference. The big difference is, in telephony network, the edges, that is the connecting devices are dumb. Network is intelligent. The telephony network, the device which accesses the network is dumb. What is a telephone? It's a dumb machine. You have to just press the numbers, connect to the network. It's a dumb machine. Machine is dumb. Network is intelligent. Contrast that with internet. In internet, the network is dumb. The devices are intelligent. Are you getting the difference? So, though roadways, telephony network and other things also are somewhere related to internet, the network of internet by design is different. Internet was designed for a specific purpose, as all of you know. Why was internet designed? Well, early internet was designed because they wanted to connect the machines which had important information so that the information could survive even if one node fails in the network. There was a real threat of the countries being bombed, and they said we want such a network in our country, in the United States, where even if one city is bombed, the information is not destroyed. We will not have something like the Library of Alexandria, which was burned down, and the entire knowledge base was lost forever. We should not have such kind of situation of the internet was created. So internet is created deliberately to survive failure of its nodes, and therefore there is no central authority which governs. Internet is not centrally governed. If you ask me, how can I add my system to the internet? It's very easy. Even if you have a machine which runs a particular operating system and which has a particular configuration, it does not matter. There is no entry restrictions. That has been made possible, one, because of the network design of internet, and second, because of the contribution of Tim Berners-Lee should be remembered. It is thanks to them we have an internet which is open. The protocols, the TCP/IP, it's almost 30 years now. 1984 is the timeline when TCP/IP was accepted. So 30 years, before 30 years, somebody had a vision of having TCP/IP as a protocol. And subsequently, every computer manufacturer, every operating system developer supported TCP/IP. That is why we have open internet. And then came Tim Berners-Lee. HTTP, HTML, all the protocols were designed in such a way that the information access becomes open. See, you have to understand that the network by design was open. Over that, we have to create this thing called a cyberspace, right? People consciously made the cyberspace such that it is open. Internet was open. Cyberspace by design was made open. That is why today internet is open as we know. We don't seem to value this fact as internet is open. And this constant conflict between these two things. Network is open, but it is very easy for people to control that network via some protocols. After 95, when internet became public, and as of today, after 20 years, when internet is making real inroads, and when internet is really threatening the traditional way of doing the business, some tough questions are being asked. People are now asking why internet should be open. Why should there be free for all in internet? Why shouldn't we censor and control internet? Should there be a global mechanism to control internet? Questions are being asked. And some are valid points. For example, business people are asking, see, internet as a network is made possible because somebody creates the network. Somebody should dig the earth, somebody should put put the cable there, somebody should build the tower, somebody should put the switches and routers there, somebody should get the electricity, somebody should run the system, right? Somebody should put the server there. So there is investment required to run the internet. Compared with the road network, the government invests on the infrastructure. With the internet, it is not so. It is the business people who invest on the infrastructure. They have to lay long cables through the sea. They have to set up huge communication mechanism through which the satellite link can be established. So huge investment is required in bringing internet to everyone. Now who will pay for it is the question. The traditional business model doesn't seem to work. For example, take cable TV network. There are many cable TV service providers. They also pull the wire to your homes. They have all the switches and other facilities. They also invest on infrastructure. How do they get it? How do they get it back? How do they get their investment back? As a customer, you pay them back, but that's a very small amount. The major of the revenue comes from the channels themselves. Channels who pay them to carry their content in their cable TV and get it to your home. So the content providers pay for the transmitters to give the content to your home. Businessmen are asking, why can't internet content providers do the same thing for the internet service providers? That is, if I am the internet service provider, I will come to know that around 60% of my traffic is only Facebook and YouTube. Then why shouldn't I go to Facebook and YouTube and ask them, sir, see that my network, most of my network is consumed by your content, why don't you pay me? It seems a valid argument that the businessmen are asking why their investment shouldn't be returned by the companies whose content they are carrying. If Facebook and YouTube and others have become so big, it is mainly because these people are carrying their content to people. And they are making huge profit. Why don't they share their profit with these people who are actually carrying the content? This is the debate which is being asked today. And though this argument may sound very appealing, we are opposing that. Why are we opposing that? Because this is the concept which has been branded or given the name of net neutrality. We do not want the content providers to pay for carrying their content because we fear that by doing so, only the big players will be able to bring their content to us. The small players who will not be able to pay will not be able to make their content visible to us. Why did Facebook become famous? Why did Google become famous? They all had humble beginnings, right? They all started small. Because they were available to everyone, they became famous. Now that they are famous, they shouldn't say we will block others. That is wrong. What Facebook is doing in the name of internet.org, now they have renamed it as Free Basics. Very appealing name. Free is there. Anything free is very appealing. So internet.org was not coming out well, so they have renamed it as Free Basics. Wherein they are saying that we are giving the basic services, basic bouquet of website, free of cost to everyone. The argument which the CEO of Facebook keeps making, and he made when he came to India in IIT Delhi, also was that some connectivity is better than no connectivity, he says. Instead of Large population in India does not have access to internet. So he says some access to internet is better than no access at all. No, it is wrong. It is wrong. Because people should know that internet means openness. It is not selectively accessing some sites. And Free Basics or earlier avatar internet.org was not supporting video sites. So if you are giving a bouquet of channels to people, free access, they will not have access to videos, which is one of the basic attraction of internet today among the internet users. So why we should oppose net neutrality is because one, by design internet is open. I mean to say the network infrastructure is open. Anybody can come, anybody can join, anybody can virtually using any device can connect it. That is built into the design of the network. So by design internet is open. Over that, the cyberspace which we have created, that is through the protocols and other things, they are also open. If internet has benefited humanity in some way, it is because it is open. Now, you want to break it in two ways. One, you want to provide those services to people depending upon their ability to pay. So if you are paying 100 rupees, you will get only these websites. If you are paying 200 rupees, you will get this website. If you want full access to internet, pay me 1000 rupees. It can't work like this. And second, you should not distinguish the service based on the payment made to you by the service provider. For example, if Flipkart is paying you more, Airtel should not say, I will give more bandwidth if you are using Flipkart. And if you are using Amazon, it will be slow. That should not happen. Preferential bandwidth assignment should not happen. People should not be asked to pay more for accessing more sites. That should not happen. So both these principles cannot be compromised. In India right now, we do not have a law regarding net neutrality, but the issue will become even more important in coming days because forget the normal desktop based internet, mobile internet is overtaken, and mobile internet is provided by mobile service providers. They are having an upper hand and they are used to the previous models. We should fight against this preferential assignment in internet. Net neutrality is a principle which cannot be compromised. It should not be compromised. And the openness of the internet should be preserved. That is because I said it's in the design. The next part of my lecture, I will talk about the cyberspace and what are the conflicts which are emerging in cyberspace.